So this is the Nectar devotion, and today we'll begin discussing the preface. The Nectar devotion is a summary study of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which was written in Sanskrit by Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. He was the chief of the 6 Goswamis, who were the direct disciples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When he first met Lord Chaitanya, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada was engaged as a minister in the Mohammedan government of Bengal. He and his brother Sanatan were then named Dabir Ghas and Sakar Malik, respectively, and they held responsible posts as the ministers of the Nawab Hussain Shah. So in this particular section, Prabhupada begins the preface, which is really the beginning of the entire work itself. The Nectar of Devotion is a translation, a kind of summary translation, summary study by Srila Prabhupada of Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which literally means Nectar of Devotion, right? So it's almost like a free-form translation. How do you go? And so, this is a very extensive philosophical treatise, and it talks about many different things. And it's more, as we'll discuss coming up, it's more or less divided up into 4 oceans. And so we'll only be discussing the first ocean of the first quarter of the book. We're not going to read the whole book, right? And the first quarter of the book is kind of like a preliminary study of what devotional service is, what sadhana bhakti is, which is what we practice, what raganuga bhakti is, and then what bhava and prema bhakti are, which are like the highest levels of devotional service. So, and it talks about, it like kind of defines what devotional service is. We may get to that today. And really gives us a clear idea of what bhakti is and what the different characteristics of bhakti are. And sort of like, the book also discusses what are some of the preliminary things that you need to enter into bhakti. So it's more or less, this is like the handbook for bhakti by Srila Rupa Goswami, who is our, one of our principal acharyas, our principal teachers. And so this is an extremely important book, and that's why Srila Prabhupada has included it within the canon for the Bhakti Shastri course. And so he begins this in the preface. This is actually where the Sanskrit begins for the text, with a discussion of who historically Srila Rupa and Sanatan Goswami were. Okay? And so Rupa and Sanatan, I think what we can take away from this is that they were considered practically Muslim. They were born in the highest class of Brahminical society, Haribol, and the Sarasvat Brahmin community. And yet, due to their association and the fact that they had worked in the government of the Nawab Hussain Shah, they were basically considered Muslims. Like they were practically converted, at least externally, culturally. They had big beards and everything like that. And that is an important philosophical point coming up, because Lord Chaitanya, even though they were considered outcasts due to being Muslims externally, they were elevated to the highest position of Goswamis. And it shows the purifying power of a devotional service, which is one of the main topics of this particular book as well. Okay? Here. Please come in. There's some folding chairs in the back there. No, better to sit. Oh. Okay, so it says, at that time, 500 years ago, the Hindu society was very rigid, and if a member of the Brahmin caste accepted the service of a Mohammedan ruler, he was at once rejected from Brahmin society. That was the position of the 2 brothers, Dabir Ghas and Sakar Malik. This is the first page of the preface. They belonged to the highly situated Saraswat Brahmin community, but they were ostracized due to their acceptance of ministerial posts in the government of Hussain Shah. It is the grace of Lord Chaitanya that he accepted these 2 exalted personalities as his disciples and raised them to the position of Goswamis, the highest position of Brahminical culture. Similarly, Lord Chaitanya accepted Haridas Thakur as his disciple, though Haridas happened to be born in a Mohammedan family, and Lord Chaitanya later on made him the acharya of the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Lord Chaitanya's principle is universal. Anyone who knows the science of Krishna and is engaged in the service of the Lord is accepted as being in a higher position than a person born in a family of a Brahmin. That is the original principle accepted by all Vedic literatures, especially by Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, the principle of Lord Chaitanya's movement, and educating and elevating everyone to the exalted post of Goswami as taught in the Nectar devotion. So the point being that Krishna is not a Hindu god, right? It's not that people are converting to Hinduism as much as Lord Krishna is Jagannath. He's the Lord of the universe. He's God for everybody. He is God. There's one God, just as there's one sun shining up in the sky. So there's one Supreme Lord. And individuals may call the sun by different names, Sun or Surya, right? But it's ultimately the same sun. So in the same way, there's really only one God, and the soul is eternally the same within the heart of all living beings. We're all the same, and therefore Krishna can be worshipped by anyone, right? There's a universalist nature of Vaishnavism, and nor is one's physical body so important, right? We all have different types of physical body according to our karma. They look different, they act different, they think different, they have different desires, different tastes, different motivations, different propensities for work, right? Radically different attitudes and cultures. But none of that stuff matters because Krishna consciousness is on the platform of the soul. Even if you just look around the room here, you see so many different varieties of people. If it weren't for Krishna, we probably wouldn't hang out with each other, right? No offense, but we don't have much in common, right? We're all very different. And yet we're united together in one place at one time. Why? Because of Krishna, right? Because Krishna's God, and that applies to everyone at all times, no matter what their background. He's there, we're all connected to Krishna and each other on the spiritual platform. And that's the platform with which we interact. And therefore you could see from the very beginning with Lord Chaitanya and his most intimate associates, and the 6 Goswamis were considered like his disciples, then he didn't consider any physical background. Okay? And of course Sanatana and Rupa, they're brothers. They're actually born from the same mother, along with they had another brother, Anupam, who's also a great Vaishnava. But Rupa Goswami is the younger brother, and he treats Sanatana Goswami as his guru. Or rather, he is his guru. He always speaks of Sanatana Goswami as his guru. Okay? So that's an important point that'll come up. So Lord Chaitanya met the two brothers, Dhabir Khas and Sakar Malik, in a village known as Ramkeli in the district of Malda. And after that meeting, the brothers decided to retire from government service and join Lord Chaitanya. Dhabir Khas, who was later to become Rupa Goswami, retired from his post and collected all the money he had accumulated during his service. It is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that his accumulated savings and gold coins equaled millions of dollars and filled a large boat. So he had an entire boat of gold. Right? He was very, very wealthy. In fact, nowadays, see what happened was the Nawab Hussain Shah was a pretty vicious sort of tyrant, an aggressive individual. He wanted to spend all of his time invading neighboring kingdoms, right? And especially he was trying to invade Jagannath Puri as well. And so, but he needed some qualified people to take care of his kingdom at home. So, Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, they were Vaishnavas, living simply as Brahmanas. They're very well respected, but they're also very capable. And so Nawab Hussain Shah began persecuting the local Vaishnavas, threatening them, attacking them, and told Rupa and Sanatana, if you don't take over the government, you don't become ministers in my government and run it for me, then I'm going to persecute the Vaishnavas. If you do, then I'll leave them alone, right? So Rupa and Sanatana became ministers. And they weren't just low-level ministers, they were basically like the prime minister and the home minister. Like Sanatana Goswami is like the prime minister of England, and Rupa Goswami is like, the secondary minister. And so they were hugely wealthy. They had big estates and everything. But they devoted all their money basically to Krishna consciousness. Like they would have, constantly, they had almost like a palaces, but they would invite Brahmanas and Vaishnavas over, and place was constantly absorbed in Krishna Katha. But nevertheless, they walked around dressed as Muslims. They spoke Arabic and Persian, and, they were part of the local government. And so some of the sort of caste-conscious Brahmanas considered them outcasts, right? So here it says, he divided the money in a very exemplary manner, which should be followed by devotees in a particular, and by humanity in general. 50% of his accumulated wealth was distributed to Krishna-conscious persons, namely the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. 25% was distributed to relatives, and 25% was kept against emergency expenditures and personal difficulties. Later on, when Sakar Malik also proposed to retire, the Nawab was very much agitated and put him into jail. But Sakar Malik, who later was to become Srila Sanatana Goswami, took advantage of his brother's personal money, which had been deposited with a village banker, and escaped from the prison of Hussein Shah. And this way, both brothers joined Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay, so Rupa Goswami, he basically, as soon as they came across Lord Chaitanya, Rupa and Sanatan decided, that's it. We're out of here. We don't want to do this anymore. We're going to leave our government positions, and we're just going to follow Lord Chaitanya, and do whatever he says. We're going to become renunciates. And so, in Rupa Goswami, he did it first. He got out of there. And then the Nawab Hussain Shah wasn't very happy with this. So then when Sanatana Goswami also came to the Nawab, and he's like the prime minister, and he's like, I want to leave my service to your government. And immediately he arrested him and had him thrown in prison. And so Rupa Goswami had, kept this money aside for emergencies. He left basically everything, but he kept his, he gave 50% essentially for Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, just gave it away, temples, etc. And then 25% he kept for his family, and 25% he kept for emergencies. So then that 25% that he kept aside for emergencies, they used it to bribe the jailer. Right? Basically, he went to the jailer, and it's all described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And Sanatana Goswami said, he presented it to him in a very diplomatic way, like, "Oh, great Muslim, I am going to go on Hajj to Mecca. If you release me from prison, I'll give you all of this money, but it's not for money that you'll release me. It's because you're so pious and you just want to help a poor Muslim pilgrim go to Mecca, right? And therefore, please release me, and you'll be doing a great act of charity." And of course the prison guard was like, with all the gold in front of him, yes, I'm feeling very pious today. I'm going to go ahead and help you in this holy pilgrimage. But what will happen to me? Because if I explain that you escaped, then I'll be in trouble. The Nawab Hussain Shah will kill me. The Nawab Hussain Shah was very brutal. Like there's even stories like he having like an architect build a city, and if he didn't like how it was going, he would march them up to the top of a minaret and just throw them off. So he was very one of these real heavy, violent people. And so anyway, the Sanatana Goswami said, just tell him that I went down to the river like a past stool, and I went down to the river to bathe with my chains on, and then I just jumped into the river with the chains on and drowned, right? And so this is what he did. But really what happened was Sanatana Goswami was running through the forest. In fact, there's so many stories of Rupa and Sanatana, how they escaped. It's all there in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Running through the forest, running through the jungles, and so many different things happened to them, so many adventures. But eventually they met Lord Chaitanya at Prayag, at Allahabad, which is like halfway to Vrindavan. Okay. So Rupa Goswami first met Lord Chaitanya at Prayag, Allahabad, India, on the Dashashvamedha bathing ghat of that holy city. So that's a very famous place, the Dashashvamedha ghat. The Lord instructed him continually for 10 days. The Lord particularly instructed Rupa Goswami in the science of Krishna consciousness. These teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada are narrated in our book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. It's also in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, like the instructions. And so it's that Rupa Goswami then turned into this. Okay, so it's those instructions directly by Lord Chaitanya, and then he sort of what the service given to the six Goswamis was kind of like twofold. They were to take the teachings of Lord Chaitanya and then codify them according, present them in a very organized fashion. And then, because Lord Chaitanya, he only left the Shikshashtaka, right? Chaitodharpanamarjana, 8 different shlokas, which gives kind of an essence of chanting Hare Krishna and the whole process of devotional service. It's all kind of there in a compact form. But the broader teachings, he wanted the Goswamis to really write them out in a very clear step-by-step fashion, make the whole all clear, and then also give support from the Shastra, like quote different shlokas and things to support it all. And then also to discover the different holy places and sort of develop Vrindavan as a place of pilgrimage and find the different places where Krishna's pastimes happened and build temples and things like that. So that was part of their service too. Okay? And so the 6 Goswamis, they're really the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. There's these great personalities that all lived in Vrindavan essentially at the same time, and they're all close associates of Lord Chaitanya. And they perform tremendous amount of service. And so it's their body of work which then comes to us as Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And Srila Rupa Goswami is considered our guru. We're Rupanugas. meaning we come in his line. Okay? So this is our Gurudev, Rupa Goswami's teachings here. All right? So later, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada elaborated the teachings of the Lord with profound knowledge of revealed scriptures and authoritative references from various literatures. Srila Srinivasacharya described in his prayers to the 6 Goswamis that they were all highly learned scholars, not only in Sanskrit, but also in foreign languages such as Persian and Arabic, and they scrutinizingly studied all the Vedic scriptures in order to establish the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu on authorized principles of Vedic knowledge. So if you turn to this page here, this kind of like entrance page here. So this is the prayers to the 6 Goswamis, at least one of the lines from this Sad Goswami Astaka, which is written by Srinivasacharya.
We don't have it.
You don't have it? Okay. Only the old book has it, right? So, Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipuno Sadharma Samstapako Lokanam Hitakaranau Tribhuvane Manyau Shadanya Karo Radha Krishna Padara Vinda Bhajana Nandena Mataliko Vande Rupa Sanatana Raga Yugo Shri Jiva Gopalago. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the 6 Goswamis, namely Srila Sanatana Goswami, Srila Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Srila Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopal Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizingly studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of human beings. So, Nana Shastra Vicharanaika Nipuno. So they're very expert, nipuna, at going through all the shastras and establishing what is the sadharma samstapaka, right? So they're basically looking at all the different scriptures within the Vedas and finding sadharma and then establishing it. Okay? That was their main service. Thus they are honored all over the 3 worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they're absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the trust and the loving service of Radha and Krishna. Okay. So, the present Krishna consciousness movement is also based on the authority of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who are therefore generally known as Rupanugas, or followers in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada. It is only for our guidance that Srila Rupa Goswami prepared his book Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is now presented in the form of the Nectar of Devotion. Persons engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement may take advantage of this great literature and be solidly situated in Krishna consciousness. And also, at the end of the preface, we'll see that, actually take a look at the end of the preface. You see here it says April 13th, 1970, ISKCON headquarters, 3764 Watsika Avenue, Los Angeles, California. Prabhupada wrote this here, right? In fact, if you go and, it has a different picture on the front. If you look at this picture, is actually hanging up in Prabhupada's quarters, right? Because it was painted there at the same time that Prabhupada was working on the Nectar of Devotion. So up there in Prabhupada's quarters, how many of you have been there? Pretty much almost everybody. So that's where Prabhupada wrote this. All right? So it's very interesting that we're studying it here, but it's really for establishing people solidly in Krishna consciousness. That's why Prabhupada translated it. He wanted to see that devotees were fixed in devotional service and had a clear understanding of what to do. Okay? So now, here Prabhupada, after talking about the history, so now he's talking about the definition, right? We're sort of getting towards Rupa Goswami's definition of pure devotional service, but he's going to talk about what Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu means, what the name of the book means. Okay?
What page are we on?
We're in the preface, on page 10 or 11 in Roman numerals, at least in my book.
X what?
1 I. So bhakti means, quote-unquote, devotional service. Every service has some attractive feature which drives the servitor progressively on and on. Every one of us within this world is perpetually engaged in some sort of service, and the impetus for such service is the pleasure we derive from it. Okay, so this is significant. Bhakti means devotional service. That's what it means. So bhakti. Some people will translate it as devotion, or just devotion, or religious worship. But Prabhupada always translated it as devotional service. Okay? So that's significant because Prabhupada's idea is that it has to be practical exhibition. You have to actually do something for Krishna. Right? It's not just sentiment. It's not just, weeping and crying or something and smoking a bidi after the kirtan. It's not just some kind of, show or something like that. Right? It's actually practically doing something, sacrificing something for God out of love. Okay? You take that devotion and then you turn it into service for the pleasure of Krishna. And as we'll see coming up in the definition of pure devotional service, which is the most important verse in the whole book, that element of rendering service is important. And why do we render service? Well, all of us are serving something, right? And Prabhupada mentioned here, driven by affection for his wife and children, a family man works day and night. A philanthropist works in the same way for love of the greater family, and a nationalist for the cause of his country and countrymen. That force which drives the philanthropist, the household, and the nationalist is called rasa, or a kind of mellow relationship whose taste is very sweet. So rasa means like a nectar, or like a flavor. And Bhaktivedanta Saraswati translated it within the context of this as mellow. It's the pleasure, it's the flavor that you experience as you render service to Krishna. And then Srila Prabhupada takes that same translation of mellow and then applies it here as well. That's where Prabhupada gets the word mellow, right? So it means like the flavor, the pleasure that you experience when you're doing something. And there's two types of mellow, you might say. There's bhakti ras, and then there's mundane ras. There's the pleasure, the mellow of doing mundane things, and there's the pleasure of doing spiritual things, of doing things for Krishna, right? And so these have two different characteristics or qualities, and we'll hear about that coming up. So the nature of mundane ras, that's what drives people to do everything. The only reason you do things is because you get something from it. You get some pleasure. Like if you have, like for example, when people, at least traditionally, when they're hiring a man for a job, they're looking for a man, they want to see, is he married and does he have children, right? Because if not, they don't want to hire him because he's not going to be steady, he's not going to be fixed, he's not going to be stable. Why? Because the reason that a man will work every day and take this hard responsibility and just push through it and drive through it and do all the things he doesn't want to do is because he's got a picture of his wife and kids on his desk, right? Otherwise, he's not going to do it. Yeah? And so that, for women, the same thing. If you look at a woman's desk, you'll see, generally you don't see the husband too much, but you'll see the kids, The husband, that picture's, it's on a hinge, so it can go up or down on the desk, right? And so the children are always there, right? Or you'll see, like the screensaver has, Jamaica, come to Jamaica, they're like working for 6 months, waiting to get to Jamaica, right? And going on a cruise or something like that. And so people are, they look at when you look at an advertisement for traveling or something, what are they trying to do? They're trying to create rasa. Come to India. Come to magical India. If you go to India, it doesn't look like that, right? But, you've got like the sun, going through the smoky sunset or something, and the trees of India and a peacock or something. They're trying to sell you a certain rasa, a certain mellow, right? Come to Jamaica, man, and they've got the guy playing the steel drums and everything. That's not really. Maybe if you leave the resort, that's not what Jamaica looks like, right? But they're trying to sell you a certain flavor. And so it's that flavor that people work for every single day, right? When people sit down after work and they watch television or something, and what are they trying to get? Well, that show is creating a certain flavor, a certain mellow, and people want to taste that with their mind, okay? And so this is what makes the world turn, mundane pleasure that people are trying to taste, all right? Whereas Krishna pleasure is entirely different. Prabhupada says here, bhakti rasa is a mellow different from the ordinary rasa enjoyed by the mundane workers. Mundane workers labor very hard day and night in order to relish a certain kind of rasa, which is understood as sense gratification. Okay, so the pleasure of mundane rasa is based around gratifying the senses and gratifying the mind, based on gratifying the body. In fact, everything that's there is based around sense gratification. Even when the husband or father, when he buys all the gifts at Christmas time, and you'll see the dad or the mom, they're always just sitting there when the kids open the present, and the parents are experiencing happiness, right? The parents have a big smile on their face. What are they tasting? They're tasting rasa. right? They're feeling, I am the provider. I'm giving to my kids. I love my kids. The kids are happy, right? Whoa, and the kids really like exaggerate it, right? They get an Xbox game or whatever. Whoa! And even like they'll go so extreme as to like, even though like they're mildly happy, but they amplify it in order to tell the parents, more, right? You've done it. You've understood what I want, right? so that's mundane, right? And the parent thinks, yes. So that's mundane Ras, but what is he giving the child? He's giving the child sense gratification, right? That's what it's based around, gratifying the body. The senses means the body and the mind. So if you can gratify the body and mind of another person, that's sense gratification, right? And it gets selfish. Like the most extremely selfish is, I don't care about anyone's sense gratification but my own, right? And then from there it gets a little less selfish. Well, at least, my kids and my wife and all that, them too. I'll work for sense gratification from them. A little more expansive is, my particular group that I belong to, whatever, right? Or my national group, my ethnic group, this thing, that thing, my religious group. And then beyond that, maybe I care for all humanity, right? I've moved beyond national boundaries, and now I want, but the principle's the same. I want to give them Xbox games. Right? Like you go to, like there's some starving village somewhere, and, people go and give them Apple, what are they called? The iPads or something. They don't even know what the heck it is, what it's for. It doesn't really matter to them. They don't care about that. They'll just give me money, But instead, this is what this is sense gratification, So it's all based upon that same principle of sense gratification. Does that make sense? And so it's really, no matter how far you get, even you go beyond even caring for all humanity, you can care for the aliens, or interstellar compassion. It's still how to give sense gratification. All right? So the relish of taste of the mundane Ras does not long endure. Therefore, mundane workers are always apt to change their position of enjoyment. A businessman is not satisfied by working the whole week. Therefore, wanting a change for the weekend, he goes to a place where he tries to forget his business activities. Therefore, after the weekend is spent in forgetfulness, he again changes his position and resumes his actual business activities. Material engagement means accepting a particular status for some time and then changing it. This position of changing back and forth is technically known as bhogatyag, which means a position of alternating sense enjoyment and renunciation. A living entity cannot steadily remain in either sense enjoyment or renunciation. Okay, so you could see on your workbook here, or your sort of student handbook. Did you have one? You want to come get one?
Yes.
So you can see in here, it says on the top, Chapala Sukha, and Bhoga Tyag. So these are 2 points that you want to remember. You want to remember what Chapala Sukha and Bhoga Tyag is, yeah? Yeah, sure. So Chapala Sukha Chapala means that it's temporary, it's constantly moving or shifting. You want to share with him? So Chapala means it's constantly moving and shifting. So the happiness of sense enjoyment, it doesn't last long, right? How many of you used to play PlayStation? Okay. So how many of you still play PlayStation? so those games, they're boring now, right? You threw them all away. Like, what happened to them? Where are they now? Right? Remember when you used to get them at Christmas, or whatever, Diwali, you were like, oh my God, I've got Super Mario 4, or whatever it is. I'm going way back. So Tekken 3. So I've got this and that, and you were ecstatic. But what happened? Well, the game got boring, right? You don't want to play it anymore. So that's called Chapala Sukha. The enjoyment that comes from the things of sense objects, it doesn't last very long. Okay? It just comes for a short burst, and then it goes away. Like, for example, eating ice cream. And if you all feel that you have had enough of your ice cream, you can give it to me. But when the general, when you first get like a pint of ice cream or something, the first 2 bites are like, and you're in bliss, oh, you're floating in heaven. But then bite number 3 is kind of like, okay, yeah, bite 4 over. Bite 20 is like, okay, that's enough. I guess I just finished this because I don't want to throw it away or something, right? So even with eating, it's only good for the first few bites, right? Or in relationships, man and woman first come together and, it's like Romeo and Juliet, oh, what breaks that light for yonder window, and then after the end of maybe the first 2 years or something, then it's like, Titus or one of the other, the tragedies of Shakespearean literature, right? It's some kind of, horrible drama, or even Romeo and Juliet itself, it ends with them dying, right? So it ultimately becomes a source of misery. That same thing which gave you so much pleasure, it eventually becomes a source of stress and misery. And it becomes a tragedy, right? And there's a lot of difficulties and suffering. So that's the nature of material enjoyment, okay? It gives you a burst of happiness, and then gradually that happiness goes away. And therefore you always have to be shifting your position, because you have to be moving to something else that gives you fresh happiness, right? How is it when they advertise to buy something? What do they always say? New and improved, right? Improved and new. And they just constantly have to be. Why, if you're in advertising or marketing, this. But business, it's all the same thing. Like soap powder or something. But they've got to give some explosive picture on the cover and change. It's new, or they change the box or the shape of the box or this thing or that thing. They're somehow trying to change it up because they have to keep everything new, because nothing ever gives happiness for very long. And that's what they're selling you. They're not selling you a product. They're selling you rasa, right? That's what the commercials are, like if you buy this dish soap, you'll somehow be transported into the Alps, where it smells like evergreen forest and, there's a big lumberjack there or something. So but the thing is they constantly have to be shifting and changing, okay? Because it's never going to provide happiness for very long. And so that's what we do in the material world. We're constantly changing our position because nothing lasts long enough to satisfy us. There's nothing that will give us continuous pleasure, which is what we are looking for as a soul. The soul cannot be satisfied in this position we're always shifting. The soul has to taste. The soul, we're an addict, like a drug addict. Like a drug addict needs heroin constantly, right? Like for a drug addict, it'd be happy if it can just sit there and have like a main line of heroin just right in a bag, just walking like with one of those hospital racks, and like a bag of heroin, yeah, and just in a wheelchair, just kind of going along, So that's what we're looking for, right? But and that's what the soul wants. The soul wants constant pleasure, right? And the soul wants pleasure that's constantly increasing. But we're looking for it on all these temporary things that are constantly dying out on us, right? And so that's called, we want basically only that eternal happiness that can only be found in bhakti ras. All right? So one of the key principles of devotional service, we have to transform, not the right word, we have to shift our desire for pleasure from the material world and from sense gratification, which is temporary, to Krishna, which will actually satisfy us. That's really, and the reason we don't, it takes us a long time to figure that out is because we're blockheads, right? we're basically so much in ignorance that we don't have faith that Krishna will give us that constant pleasure. And therefore, even though we're right in the midst of Krishna, we're always looking towards the material energy trying to taste mundane ras. Right? Because sitting before the deities and listening to, Mick Jagger scream something on your iPad or something, right? Your iPhone. Like you're trying to absorb, you have Krishna's mercies upon you, and yet we're directing our attention towards mundane ras. So the real difficulty is how to shift our attention from mundane ras to bhakti ras, okay? So, all right. And Prabhupada gives us the example here that, like with working, that's why we have weekends, right? You work for 5 days and then you get 2 days off. Because if it was always work, you wouldn't be happy. And if it was always vacation, believe it or not, you wouldn't be happy, right? When people retire, they always get bored and, it loses its taste after some time. So no matter how you shift your position, you'll never really be happy in the material world. Even if you think you're going on a permanent vacation or whatever, it doesn't work like that. You're going to get tired of whatever situation you're in. And you're going to want to change it. Yeah, so this is our nature. We've always got the carrot in front of our face, right? Like the donkey with the carrot tied. We're always thinking this situation sucks, but there's one out there that's good, and I can get to it, I just got to keep working, and I'll get to that position where I'll be happy. Yeah, but it never actually manifests. Because as soon as you get there, you'll be happy for 10 minutes, and then you're looking forward again to another position. Okay? So in this way we go lifetime after lifetime in samsara. So change is going on perpetually, and we cannot be happy in either state because of our eternal constitutional position. So we're not happy with temporary things. So sense gratification does not endure for long. It is therefore called chapala sukha, or flickering happiness. For example, an ordinary family man who works very hard day and night and is successful in giving comforts to the members of his family, thereby relishes a kind of mellow, but his whole advancement of material happiness immediately terminates, along with his body, as soon as his life is over. Death is therefore taken as the representative God for the atheistic class of men. The devotee realizes the presence of God by devotional service, whereas the atheist realizes the presence of God in the shape of death. At death, everything is finished, and one has to begin a new chapter of life in a new situation, perhaps higher or lower than the last one. In any field of activity, political, social, national, or international, the result of our actions will be finished with the end of life, that is sure. So death is the, kind of like the final authority. It's like even if you're an atheist or you're materialist, you're just devoted to material energy, you have this authority above you that forces everything to continually move on. And you can't stay for very long, right? Imagine you have, say you're living homeless in Los Angeles, that there's so many thousands of people that live in what are they called, RVs and stuff like that, and you stay on a street for maybe 4 or 5 days, and then all of a sudden you get that nightstick on your window, hey, get over there, LAPD, and they're shining the flashlight in, and they're telling you to move on, right? And no matter what you do, LAPD is there, they're going to find you, and they're going to move you on, and you may find, some other place you're staying, and another couple days, there he is, it's maybe even the same cop, I just kicked you out of here the other day, right? So it's the same thing with material nature. No matter what we do in life, no matter what we build, Krishna comes, ultimately his authority is there, right? In the form of death, as death's like the LAPD. And so, but ultimately death is working for Krishna, and it's the authority of Krishna. So whether or not you believe in the authority of the government or not, the LAPD is going to force you to believe in the authority. Yeah, you can even tell the police, what do they call themselves? They don't follow any, I don't subscribe to any laws, right? What is it? No. This is they're sovereign citizens, right? I'm not a citizen of the United States. I'm a citizen of my own country, and my own land is wherever I happen to be standing, and I have my own, I have my own constitution, and I don't follow any of the rules and laws of America. And the cop says, shut up and put your hand behind your back. So it's the same thing, you may not believe in God and all this and all that, but shut up and put your hand behind your back, right? His authority is coming down on you whether or not you believe in him or not, okay? So at death, everything is finished, and whatever you're attached to, ultimately you have to leave it. It's a very sad situation, right? All those pictures on your, imagine, you've got your pictures of your family all over your desk. By this time you've got grandchildren and great-grandchildren. All those pictures are going to evaporate right in front of your eyes, right? You'll forget them all as you're born again. So all of these different attachments, everything that you're super attached to, it all is lost at the time of death. You can take nothing with you. All right? So bhakti ras, however, the mellow relished in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, does not finish with the end of life. It continues perpetually and is therefore called amrita, that which does not die but exists eternally. Okay? So now we have 3 words. Bhakti rasamrita means that bhakti ras, which is amrita. Mrita means death, and amrita is the opposite. That means like the opposite. So amrita means that which is deathless. So it's eternal. It's beyond temporary nature. So bhakti rasamrita, Sindhu. And then a Sindhu is an ocean. And like we have the Pacific Ocean here. If you go there and visit, you'll see, all the way to the horizon. So imagine that amount of bhakti ras, right? If you get 1 drop of bhakti ras, like a little tiny drop, comes trickling down with that sound effect down to your head, then you'll immediately be totally overwhelmed with bliss, right? You'll feel like your whole existence is being washed away by the beauty of Krishna, like you'll feel transcendental ecstasy. Okay? Now that's just one little drop. Imagine if you go to the ocean and you jump in it and you swim in it. That's what Krishna's pastimes and Krishna's personality is. All right? So this is confirmed in all the Vedic literatures. Bhagavad Gita says that the little advancement of bhakti ras can save the devotee from the greatest danger, that of missing the opportunity for human life. So that's neha bhikramanasosti. The rasa is derived from our feelings in social life and family life, or in the greater family life of altruism. Philanthropy, nationalism, socialism, communism, etc. do not guarantee that one's next life will be as a human being. We prepare our next life by our actual activities in the present life. A living entity is offered a particular type of body as a result of his actions in the present body. These activities are taken into account by a superior authority known as Daiva, or the authority of God. This Daiva is explained in Bhagavad Gita as the prime cause of everything. So Daiva Netrena. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that a man takes his next body by Daiva Netrena, which means by the supervision of the authority of the Supreme. And in an ordinary sense, Daiva is explained as destiny. Daiva supervision gives us a body selected from 8,400,000 forms. The choice does not depend on our selection, but is awarded to us according to our destiny. So Daiva means ultimately Krishna, but it also means the demigods. It means the sort of like the higher functioning aspects of the universe. That's what you're reading astrology. That's what you're looking at. You're trying to deduce what is the plan of Daiva, right? So it just means the divine, right? Which means the demigods and Krishna above them, and your whole karmic destiny as organized by all of them. Okay. So if our body at present is engaged in the activities of Krishna consciousness, then it is guaranteed that we will have at least a human body in our next life. A human being engaged in Krishna consciousness, even if unable to complete the course of Bhakti Yoga, takes birth in the higher divisions of human society so that he can automatically further his advancement in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, all his bona fide activities in Krishna consciousness are amrita, or permanent. So this is another aspect of the amrita. Not only does it give you eternal pleasure, but the results that you accumulate by absorbing yourself in bhakti ras, they stay with you eternally. Right? When you do things on the bhakti ras platform, you're really making, just like if you work a job, you're making money and you're trying to build up your savings account or whatever it is. So in the same way, you're building up your spiritual savings account, and that doesn't go away. That continually builds and builds and builds, and it never diminishes. And if you put money in your spiritual bank account, then when you die, you don't take birth in a low situation. You're not degraded. Right? That spiritual bank account, because you have that in you, it saves you from being born, say, in an animal body or whatnot. In fact, if you have sufficient funds in your spiritual bank account, you'll be born in a family of devotees. Right? You can be born in a family of dhimatam. This is all mentioned at the end of the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So, you're born in a family of learned transcendentalists, and then they engage you in devotional service from the very beginning of your life. Like that little child screaming, Abhai, you can hear him screaming all the way from here. So he's, very special, right? This is a child who, all his life, even as a baby, he's taken before the deities, and he's constantly absorbed in Krishna and constantly interacting with the devotees, taking prasad, seeing the deities, chanting Hare Krishna. So this is because he's starting from previous life, right? That's like somebody that's performing devotional service very seriously, okay? And even if it's not very serious, then still you're born in a family of wealthy people or purified Brahmins. You're born in a situation where you don't have to struggle so much materially, so that you can easily take to the practice of yoga. You can kind of begin again should you choose to. Does that make sense? All right. Can someone turn the light, please? So this is the subject matter of the Nectar of Devotion. The eternal engagement in Bhakti Ras can be understood by a serious student upon studying the Nectar of Devotion. Adoption of Bhakti Ras, or Krishna consciousness, will immediately bring one to an auspicious life free from anxieties, and will bless one with transcendental existence, thus minimizing the value of liberation. Bhakti Ras itself is sufficient to produce a feeling of liberation because it attracts the attention of the Supreme Lord Krishna. So that sentence or so there, it's a reference to chapter 1, where it'll talk about the different results of practicing pure devotional service. Okay? Generally, neophyte devotees are anxious to see Krishna or God, but God cannot be seen or known by our present materially blunt senses. The process of devotional services, as it is recommended in the Nectar devotion, will gradually elevate one from material conditional life to the spiritual status, when the devotee becomes purified of all designations. The senses can then become uncontaminated, being constantly in touch with Bhakti Ras. When the purified senses are employed in the service of the Lord, one becomes situated in Bhakti Ras life, and any action performed for the satisfaction of Krishna in this transcendental Bhakti Ras stage of life can be relished perpetually. So it's just like, imagine if you had like your body and your mind are like a window, okay? And the soul is behind this window, but it's so dirty, it's like covered not just in dust, but it's covered in like thick mud. You know, like if you've been off-roading and your windshield's covered in that much mud or something, right? And and you got to really clean it, and it takes a long time, yeah? But once it's clean, you can see clearly out of the windshield. So it's the same thing. When you engage in Krishna service, your body and mind become purified, okay? It's not just a question of developing knowledge or something like that. It's actually purifying yourself. You have to clean your mind and your body. Yeah, that's the whole Ashtanga yoga. It's like on a very rudimentary level, you're trying to purify the body and the mind. So through Krishna consciousness, that same purification is there, but just by absorbing the body and mind in Krishna, right? Jivan Mukhe, say he seva, what is it? Jivan Mukhe, he's seva dao, svayameva spadatida. Just beginning with the tongue by taking Krishna prasad, yeah, then and chanting Hare Krishna, you begin purifying the body and mind. And then ultimately you begin doing devotional service, and that also purifies the body, but especially by chanting Hare Krishna and chanting the Maha Mantra attentively, that will purify body and mind. Okay? And then when you're in a sufficient stage of purity, then the soul can shine out. The soul can actually see clearly. And the soul is completely free in a sense. Okay? So it's really a process of purification. But it's purification by tasting Bhakti Ras. And so the more purified you are, the more you can perceive Krishna through that window. You can't see Krishna through your materially distorted or perverted or dirty mind and senses. That's why we don't see Krishna. Even though we chant Hare Krishna, we don't see Krishna in his name. Even though we see the deities, we just see statues, right? Because we're not purified. And therefore we're looking through our mud at Krishna. Okay? But when you look at Krishna through with no mud, like with a pure window, clean window, then you'll actually taste Bhakti Ras. It's not just looking at Krishna, it's experiencing Krishna. Right? You're going to taste Krishna. You know, that's what it means. Like, in other words, when it says Bhakti Ras, it's kind of like the way we think of seeing Krishna, as Prabhupada said here. Everyone wants to see God, right? So we think of like seeing Krishna because we're so visually centered. But really, what it is tasting Krishna, Bhakti Ras, tasting the experience of Krishna. And so you can experience that when you chant Hare Krishna. Even in the neophyte stage, the power of the holy name, it has the power to give you Bhakti Ras, to shine through your own thick, dirty windshield. Does that make sense? So in order to taste Bhakti Ras, you have to purify your windshield totally. You have to clean it. And then you can actually see and experience Krishna through your windshield. But some processes, as we'll hear, are so powerful that even with your thick, dirty windshield, rays of Krishna will shine through your windshield into you. And one of those is the holy name. Right? So if you want to taste Bhakti Ras, try chanting. Try chanting attentively and chant sincerely. And you'll get a little flavor, you know. Even if you're in a lower modes like myself, then you can chant, and if you chant without offense, and you're chanting with your full attention on the name, you go, wow, oh, nice, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, wow, what is this? This is nice. And you start to feel something, you know what I'm talking about? There's a taste that's there, right? There's a pleasure that's there, and it has distinct flavors. Yeah, that's called Bhakti Ras, yeah? But the holy name is so powerful that even though you're under 6 feet of dirt, it penetrates and you can taste it. Bhakti Ras, it's nice, right? But then when you're totally purified and you clean that windshield completely, when you chant the holy name, you don't just go, oh wow, look, little Ras. Well, what you see is you actually see Krishna in Vrindavan. You know, it's directly opening a window to Vrindavan, and that's what the 6 Goswamis. That's what they're seeing when they chant the holy name. You know, when Rupa Goswami goes, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, immediately, like for him, the spiritual world just opens up in front of his eyes, and he actually sees Radha and Krishna right there. You see? Because that's what the holy name actually is. It's directly the absolute truth. It's directly Krishna. You see? And so immediately the whole ocean of Bhakti Ras opens whenever he chants Hare Krishna, whenever Rupa Goswami chants Hare Krishna. And so the final chapters, from chapter 20 all the way to the end, it's all about that ocean, right? You know, we're going to talk about what is devotional service, but beyond that, it's all like everything about Krishna, the whole, like, you know, what is Rupa Goswami seeing in the spiritual world, and what are the different interactions, and what are the different, he kind of breaks down the whole science of Bhakti Ras. All right? We're just going to go to like the shore. You know, we're going to the first ocean, which is kind of like just talking about the process of devotional service. But what you see in the ocean and all the different interactions of the ocean, that's the rest of the book. And why don't we study the rest of the book? Because we got 6 inches of dirt on our windshield. And therefore, even though we may read it, and you should read it, you should take your time to read it, but, you know, it's all theoretical. These are things that when you actually are totally purified, then it's a direct experience, and then it makes sense. Okay? All right, so let's continue here. When one is thus engaged in devotional service, all varieties of rasas or mellows turn into eternity. In the beginning, one is trained according to the principles of regulation, under the guidance of an acharya or spiritual master, and gradually, when one is elevated, devotional service becomes automatic and spontaneous eagerness to serve Krishna. So it's talking about sadhana bhakti, what's called Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, and Raganuga sadhana bhakti. Those of you who have your notebook, I would encourage to take notes. So we'll talk about all of this, but basically Vaidhi sadhana bhakti is you're doing the activities of devotional service because you have to, which is what we do, right? You don't really want to do it. You don't like to do it. You know, God knows, I don't want to go do service. My God, right? It's terrible. I don't want to chant Hare Krishna. I'd rather do something else. It's like a lot of my time. Every day I got to grab this bead bag and I can't stand it, right? But I do it anyway. Why? Because I vowed to my guru. You know, because if I don't, then, you know, Krishna's not going to be very happy. And Guru is not going to be very happy. So therefore I hurry up and do it, right? I do it because I'm forced to do it by the rules and regulations. That's what motivates me. I'm motivated because I have to do it, right? I'm forcing myself, and I'm forced by my guru, you know, and that's why I do it. Does that make sense? Like, that's what's pushing me, is that it's my responsibility, I'm supposed to do it, got to do it.
I think that you're very attached to the holy name that you're just saying that.
Yeah, right. I wish. So anyway, that would be very nice. Maybe it will happen. But and then the other side is Raganuga, where if you do this for long enough, you become purified enough, your windshield becomes clean enough to where you can actually taste the holy name, and you actually taste your service. Right? You may be doing something, you know, make garlands for Krishna. There's a mother variety. I do daisies, roses. I hurt my finger again. You know, what is this? Right? But when you actually take, there's a lot of taste coming from that. You know, if you could actually make garlands in Krishna Prema, you'd be like, wow, you know, it's amazing, and you'd be experiencing all this pleasure while making the garland for Krishna. And of course, we're trying to give Krishna pleasure, but automatically you also receive pleasure, right? So in the beginning, you know, you force yourself to do it because you don't have a taste. But eventually you start getting a taste. You start to actually taste what you're doing, you know? And then when that happens, then you're no longer just motivated by, I got to make my garland. Now you're motivated by, I can't wait to make my garland, you know? This is amazing, right? This garland making is fantastic, right? Or I can't wait to chant my japa. It's amazing. I can't wait to chant the holy name, because you're getting so much taste, and that's what motivates you. Okay, that's called Raganuga Bhakti. And then when you're on that stage of devotional service, then there's certain internal meditations which come into play, which are a very esoteric aspect of Krishna consciousness, which we'll talk about in chapter 16 in that area. Okay, you start to cultivate your own internal attitude towards Krishna, following in the footsteps of the residents of Vrindavan. That's called Raganuga Bhakti. Yes, Prabhu?
All these practices to condition ourselves for the future of Krishna consciousness?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what was that, doing repetitions?
Yeah. You're basically, you're doing it so, you gradually become purified until you taste the glories of the activity you're doing, right?
20, 30 years later, right?
No, it could be 1 day, 1 year. Just depends how long you've been doing it before. You know, you might be on your 31st year, but you did all the rest in a past life, right? So it's just a question of like, it depends how much you have to go, and it depends how sincere you are. You know what I mean? And say like we're all driving to New York from LA, so we're all on different roads and we're all on different some of us are outside Philadelphia, some of us are at Venice Beach, or just kind of starting to walk, right? So there's different directions, but ultimately it depends how sincere you are on driving there. If you want to take a detour all the way down through Mexico and come back, through Brazil and go over to Africa and make your way to Spain and then come back the other way, that's up to you, but it's going to take you about 5-6 lifetimes, right? So, so it depends on those different factors, okay? And also the mercy of Krishna that's there, You may do something really special and your Guru Maharaj is really pleased, and then you've got your Guru Maharaj sitting next to you in the car the whole time, right? And then it's very hard to get sidetracked, because the Guru's mercy is there, and if you're willing to listen to him, then you'll go very nicely, okay? So there's quite a few different factors there. Okay, let's see here. So there are 12 kinds of rasas, as will be explained in this book, and by renovating our relationship with Krishna in 5 primary rasas, we can live eternally in full knowledge and bliss. All right, so you have the 12 rasas. There's 5 primary rasas and 7 secondary rasas. And those are all talked about kind of at the end, more towards the end of the book. And you have whole chapters talking about the different rasas, which are basically your relationship with Krishna. Because relationships are mellows. They're different flavors. Like you have your relationship with your parents, you have a relationship with your sisters, you have a relationship with your friend, right? And so those are, what are they? What are those relationships? They're different mellows. They're different flavors that you engage in. And each individual plays a certain role. Does that make sense? If your mother plays the role of a mother nicely, and you play the role of a son or daughter nicely, then you'll experience the rasa that's there, that potentially there. Okay?
And our imitation of Krishna, right?
Yeah, ultimately those.
Baby, we get to be.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, those rasas are ultimately imitations of spiritual rasa. And then the 12 secondary rasa, or the 7 secondary rasas, are things like comedy or horror, ghastliness. There's all these different secondary rasas which kind of like complement the primary rasas. You'll experience, like Krishna and the Cowherd Boys, they joke around a lot. You know what I mean? So it's like they experience secondary rasas along with their primary rasas. Okay. The basic principle of the living condition is that we have a general propensity to love someone. No one can live without loving someone else. This propensity is present in every living being. Even an animal like a tiger has this loving propensity, at least in a dormant stage, and it is certainly present in the human beings. The missing point, however, is where to repose our love so that everyone can become happy. At the present moment, the human society teaches one to love his country or family or his personal self, but there's no information where to repose the loving propensity so that everyone can become happy. That missing point is Krishna, and the Nectar of Devotion teaches us how to stimulate our original love for Krishna and how to be situated in that position where we can enjoy our blissful life. In the primary stage, a child loves his parent, then his brothers and sisters, and he daily grows up. He begins to love his family, society, community, country, nation, or even the whole human society. But the loving propensity does not satisfy it even by loving all human society. That loving propensity remains imperfectly fulfilled until we know who is the Supreme Beloved. Our love can be fully satisfied only when it is reposed in Krishna. This theme is the sum and substance of Nectar Devotion, which teaches us how to love Krishna in 5 different transcendental mellows. Now, this is very fascinating, because if you think about it, there's a certain part of us, and maybe even perhaps the best part of us, which is our love for others, right? We have, and it's, at least, I don't know, maybe for women it might be a little easier. For men, sometimes it's like we don't even know what the heck that is. Like we're like so like disconnected from emotion that it's like, it's hard to come out sometimes, right? Like I remember one time when I was, this is like I was a brahmachari. And I came to visit my family at Christmas, and I heard that my sister was going to have a child and stuff like that. And I just heard about it, and I was like, yeah, I don't really care. Stupid stuff, right? But then when I saw her, and then I saw her, and then I hugged her. She's my younger sister, and then I hugged her and stuff. And all of a sudden, it was like, I almost started crying. Like she did start crying. I I'll say almost. So, it's like, the tears just start coming out. I was like, what the heck's happening to me? What the heck is this? This like emotion. Like, what the heck is this? And it was just kind of like bursting out, like a tidal wave, like, what is, I don't do, I'm a tough guy, I don't do this crap, but somehow or other, it's like this emotion just kind of like came up and like burst through, and I, maybe a tear or two came out, but it was just like, what the heck? I couldn't believe it, and so that's our loving propensity. We have this huge tidal wave of emotion and love within us that we can actually give ultimately to Krishna, right? And that's the most powerful form of self-realization. There's other forms of self-realization. You can concentrate your mind. You can study the shastras. You can sit and twist your leg around and touch your ear, and all this type of stuff to try to mechanically somehow release the soul from bondage, right? Somehow twist and tangle and unknot the soul by your own power. But really what you got to do is just release that huge ocean of love towards Krishna. And as soon as you do that, as soon as that love hits Krishna, then it's just like, you just become overwhelmed by Krishna. Right? It's almost like, imagine like when water goes across the floor or something, and if you touch an electrical circuit, like if electricity hits water and you're standing in the water, it's like your love is like water going towards Krishna, and as soon as it hits Krishna, you're going to get the shock of your life, right? Like you're going to feel Krishna's love, yeah? And Krishna's love for you, and that love for you will just blast apart all of your material conditioning and bring you to the highest level of consciousness possible for the soul. That's pretty intense, right? So that the thing is that what we're doing in this world is we're have that loving propensity, but we keep directing it at things that are not Krishna, namely each other. And we're not able to really reciprocate with each other's loving propensities. Like if I want to give my loving propensity to you or whatever, I want to be your friend and give you my love, and that's very nice, right? He starts getting all done. He's talking about because it's kind of embarrassing. Like normally he's all smiling and stuff, and then I said if I want to direct my love towards you, he's like. So then it gets really like I'm not able to do that, and nor are you able to reciprocate. I mean, we could be friends and everything, and it's nice, but ultimately we're going to let each other down. It's just because we're not able to truly connect on the love level, not fully, right? Even you might have your parents, your mother, your father. You're still, you may love them very much, but you're still not able to 100% get the connection. Or husband and wife, it's the same thing, So in this way, only Krishna is actually the one that we can truly put our love into, that will 100% satisfy us and reciprocate with us. Why? Because that's actually what our love is for. That's actually who we truly love. We love others too. In the whole spiritual world, everyone loves each other, but they love each other in relationship to Krishna. Sort of like in the light of Krishna. You love everyone because Krishna is everyone. Yeah? Okay? So, okay, we're kind of out of time here. Okay, so anyway, Prabhupada can we read one more paragraph?
Yes.
Or even two? Yeah, let's just read two paragraphs. I'll just read it real quick and then we'll finish. In the primary stage, a child loves his parents, then his brothers and sisters, and daily grows up to love his family, society, community, country, nation, even the whole human society. But the loving propensity is not satisfied. Even by loving all humanity, that loving propensity remains imperfectly fulfilled until we know who is the Supreme Beloved. Our love can be fully satisfied only when it is reposed in Krishna. This theme is the sub and substance of Nectar devotion, which teaches us how to love Krishna in 5 different transcendental mellows. Our loving propensity expands just as a vibration of light or air expands, but we do not know where it ends. The Nectar devotion teaches us the science of loving every one of the living entities perfectly by the easy method of loving Krishna. We have failed to create peace and harmony in human society, even by such great attempts as the United Nations, because we do not know the right method. The method is very simple, but one has to understand it with a cool head. The Nectar devotion teaches all men how to perform the simple and natural method of loving Krishna, the Supreme Personality Godhead. If we learn how to love Krishna, then it's very easy to immediately and simultaneously love every living being. It is like pouring water on the root of a tree or supplying food to the stomach. The method of pouring water on the root of the tree or supplying foodstuffs to the stomach is universally scientific and practical. as every one of us has experienced. Everyone knows well that when we eat something, or in other words, when we put foodstuffs in the stomach, the energy created by such action is immediately distributed throughout the whole body. Similarly, when we pour water on the root, the energy that thus created is immediately distributed throughout throughout the entirety of even the largest tree. It is not possible to water the tree part by part, nor is it possible to feed the different parts of the body separately. The Nectar devotion will teach us how to turn one switch that will immediately brighten everything everywhere. One who does not know this method is missing the point of life. So I just wanted to comment on this last sentence. That, well, first of all, this feeding the stomach and watering the root of the tree, you should remember that. That's a very important analogy that Prabhupada will bring up quite often. But this idea that you turn on one switch and it brightens everything, just like this light switch here that Mataji turned on. So you turn on that one light and then you can see everything clearly. You don't have to walk around with a flashlight trying to look at all the books. And imagine you had like a tiny little flashlight that only allows you to see this much, right? What is this? No, you just hit one light and then you could see everything. You could see yourself. You could see the light. You could see everything in that light. So it's the same thing with Krishna. You don't have to try to give your love and devotion to everything separately. Just give it to Krishna, and then automatically it goes to everyone else perfectly. Okay? And so when you do that, if you don't do that, then you're really missing the point of life. In other words, this is the meaning of life, the big question, right? Monty Python's meaning of life. So the big question, what is it all about? So that's it. It's really to love Krishna, to love God, and then to automatically love all living entities in the light of God. That's the goal of life. Okay, thank you very much. All glories, Prabhupada.
Okay.